welcome. And let's say I'll give a shout out
Hi.
again for the good tech transitions. Kind of Representative Dr. Tami Gouveia, welcome. Well, as we've been doing, Zayda and I are a great tag team, host kind of set of interviewers. It's going to be 15 minutes total. So keep that in mind as you answer different questions. But to start out, the typical one, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running.
Great. Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Jonathan and Zayda, and everybody who's here. I mean, over 200 people, that's amazing. And I know some folks are watching on Facebook as well. So just really proud to be here. And it's an honor to be with all of you. As a candidate, I love the endorsement process because I love being able to talk about my values and the work that I've done throughout my career and how I put the health, well-being, and dignity of everybody at the center of the work that I do, and that I intend to do the same exact thing as the next Lieutenant Governor for the Commonwealth. I also just want to say, shout out to all of you in Progressive Mass. I hear about, the fact that I have 100% on the scorecard from people all across the Commonwealth. That's really a testament to the work that you all do and really have appreciated our partnership. Just really proud and grateful for the support of those who are in the room, who already support us in this race. And because you know me, for those of you who don't know me, I look forward to getting to know you and hearing about your top issues and giving you a chance to get to know me and hopefully earning your support as we go through the next couple months. I know we're going to have a meaningful conversation here for the next probably 12 and a half minutes. But one of the things that I really want to highlight, especially given the real threats to reproductive justice and reproductive health care, is just how proud I was, to sort of culminate some of my work as a community organizer into founding the Massachusetts chapter of the Women's March. We celebrated 5 years of the Women's March yesterday. We know that the Women's March has really contributed to strengthening our democracy, strengthening a lot of progressive policies, and really serving as partners to the work that we're doing here in Progressive Mass, that we're doing in the Democratic Party, and just, doing all across the state and the Commonwealth. So the reason why I'm running and the reason why I've been doing the work that I've been doing as an organizer since I was in high school, honestly, is because of the experiences that I had very early on growing up in the city of Lowell. I was very lucky that my grandfather was in the Carpenters Union. That gave my family a lot of stability and a lot of opportunities that I know so many families when I was growing up did not have access to, and that so many families continue to be really excluded from in so many ways. And I was really inspired by the work and the experiences that I had in the city to become a social worker. And it's been hard as a social worker. We oftentimes don't really make the investments that we need in the social work field and in supporting a lot of the folks who really care for our health and our mental health and the education of our students. And as a social worker, I've had some of my own financial struggles. In 2008, I was laid off during the recession that we experienced. I was a single parent at the time to my kids who were 6 and 3. So a lot of the financial struggles that so many of our families are contending with now, many of them for the first time because of COVID, I've been there. But quite honestly, we know that so many of our families, thousands of families all across the Commonwealth, have really been suffering financially for decades because of a lack of investment from government, the ways that community doesn't always have everybody's back. But I was lucky. I knew that I would land back on my feet, even though I was an unemployed single parent, because of the privileges that I have as a white person, because of the privileges that I have as an educated person and someone who grew up here in the state and someone who has connections. And I did land on my feet. Part of my story is I moved to Acton. I started organizing in this community as well. I became the state representative for the 14th Middlesex District, which I am really proudly to have been representing in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. And along the way, I became a doctor of public health, and now I am here running for Lieutenant Governor. So this is a testament to a lot of the work that we do here as progressives and that we do as the Democratic Party, is making investments so that people can go from among the lowest points in their lives to really the highs, and really, making accomplishments that they didn't think were possible, really being able to support their families in the ways that we all want to and that we all care so deeply about our children, and being able to thrive and contribute back to our community. So I'm running to be your next Lieutenant Governor, to put the health, the well-being, and the dignity of every single person in our state at the center of the ways that we make decisions. I believe that it aligns with the work that we do as progressives, and the work that we should be doing as Democrats. And I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have here for the next 10 minutes or so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Tami, I'm just excited to see you. And my first question is kind of delving into what, you and I have spoken about in the past about COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how would you evaluate the state's response to COVID-19? What would you have done differently? And how can we ensure and strengthen that Massachusetts can be resilient with anything that comes our way?
Sure. This is a doozy of a question, just giving a lot of my background. So I'll try to give it, a minute or so to answer this question, but I would give us a C. And that, because the way I interpret the question is really how have our state leaders done in managing the response to the COVID crisis. I've seen nothing but a privatized response that has continued to leave so many of our families behind, particularly our BIPOC, immigrant, and low-income families behind. It's why, I've been calling for, right from the beginning of the pandemic in late March, I filed legislation to get cash benefits into the hands of our working families and our gig workers, because they've been left behind in terms of the pandemic response. Really been calling on the governor and the House and Senate leadership to get free rapid antigen tests into the hands of every single person in our state. It's something I started working on back in February of last year. The long lines we saw and the ways that we really were not putting people's health, well-being, and dignity at the center of those decisions is why we saw those long lines. It's why we saw people scrambling to try to get access to tests. It's why we saw people scrambling to get access to vaccines. So I would have done things differently by really, first and foremost, at the beginning of the pandemic, is having a long-term plan. We know from history that we would be exactly where we are with a second variant coming. We're already having evidence of the fact that a second wave of Omicron is hitting some European countries. So we are not out of this yet. We need a doctor of public health in the corner office to guide us through the continued response to the pandemic, and a social worker who has lived experience really struggling on the edge of financial disaster to be able to put the well-being of our families at the center when it comes to an economic recovery that is just and that is fair and that is sustainable long-term, not just a quick fix and a band-aid to problematic decision after problematic decision. We need real solutions to the issues with our pandemic response. So I give us a C- because the Massachusetts people are the reasons why our vaccination rates are as high as they are, and why we've taken care as much as we humanly could, taking care of each other, from our philanthropic sector to our nonprofit organizations that have, and our teachers associations and others that have really been beating the drum to make sure that we are taking care of our students and our teachers, that we're taking care of our essential workers and our frontline workers, and really putting their health and their well-being at the center.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then to
Thank
talk a little bit about the office of the LG itself. How would you describe the office of the Lieutenant Governor to voters, especially how the office can be used to advance progressive policies? And then to narrow in on one function of the office, the Lieutenant Governor chairs the Governor's Council, and although overlooked, the Governor's Council plays an important role in judicial confirmations, parole board confirmations, and pardons and commutations. What priorities and perspectives would you bring to this part of the job?
Yeah, so I think there's tremendous opportunity in the role of Lieutenant Governor to really, the person, and I expect to be the next Lieutenant Governor, I will be rolling up my sleeves to get to work, building coalitions and working groups, bringing diverse perspectives into the ways that we are making decisions. When I look at the advisory boards, the kinds of people who are not on, like the reopening advisory board, for instance, no teacher, right? Nobody like that represented on the reopening advisory board. So the people who are really impacted by the decisions that we're making out of the corner office, they need to really be engaged in meaningful ways. And so that's the opportunity that I see with the Lieutenant Governor. So in my first 100 days, I intend to create 5 separate working groups. The first is on a just COVID response and recovery. The second is focused on humane housing and affordable housing. The third is on climate justice. The fourth is on childcare. these are the main issues that we really need to be focused on. And then the fifth is our mental health crisis. We haven't even begun to contend with what the impacts of the mental health snapback really is going to be. Our young people are truly suffering right now. I've had conversations with high schoolers, over the course of the pandemic. They're suffering. They recognize that their parents are suffering and that we don't have the workforce to meet those needs. So those are the opportunities that I see outside of the stated responsibilities on the Governor's Council. And as it relates to the Governor's Council, I will advocate with the governor for expanding the criteria of who we're selecting to be on lifelong appointments to the bench, and also appointments to parole boards. And there's a whole host of other positions that also get funneled through the Governor's Council. We need to have an expanded view around systemic racism, implicit bias, and also the role that childhood trauma plays in crime and in criminal activity, making sure that we are supporting people rather than criminalizing what are oftentimes, quite honestly, very normal responses to trauma that folks have been experiencing, some of them experiencing for several decades as young adults. So those are the things I see, and also advocating for clemency and pardons, and even, extending, this wasn't part of the questionnaire, but, extending to, being able to give work release and time so that people can be with their families. I think that's critically important for the family unit, and it's really important for our communities. And, that's how I look at expanding and advocating for racial justice within the role on the Governor's Council.
Thanks, Tami. Name one word that people who work with you would like just use to describe you, and give me one word that people that work for you would describe you.
I think people would say that I'm bold, that I'm a bold leader, because I've stood up to very powerful interests, particularly in the House of Representatives. And people who work for me, I think that they would say that I'm compassionate, because of the ways that I look at people as a whole. And I really, as a leader, I believe that we should be setting conditions for others to succeed. It's why I haven't, quite honestly, voted for a Speaker of the House yet, because I don't see them, the ones that we've had in my tenure, really putting and laying out the conditions for others to succeed. So I think that people would say that I'm compassionate and bold.
And so which governors or lieutenant governors in Massachusetts' past or in other states do you admire, and why? And what would you seek to emulate about them, or which policy ideas of theirs would you want to introduce or build upon?
For me, it's Governor Dukakis. I have had nothing but such lovely conversations and interactions with him. He's been incredibly supportive, and I don't mean in this role, but in the work that I've done as a state representative. I'm Greek, he's Greek, so we talk about some of our Greek connections. That's just been kind of a fun thing for us, but also his focus on transportation and addressing income inequality are things that I really, truly admire. I think, our income inequality in our state is at truly, it's a crisis level, and we don't talk about it enough at a crisis level, and it really is. And just thinking about the work that he did as governor, I think to try to address some and prevent some of the income inequality that we see, I think is what I hold pretty close. Interesting question, by the way.
We like to mix things up. We like to mix things up.
Yeah, I like it.
So tell me what your favorite binge on TV has been since COVID, and name a spot in Massachusetts that is your kind of reset place where you kind of re-energize.
Yeah, great questions. Okay, so I love the beach. So I'm going to start with your second question first. So I'm a Cancer. I was born in July. I have always just enjoyed anything near the water. So any beach, I am there. That is really, truly my reset place. My binge is been a whole bunch of different TV shows. We picked back up Ozark last night. So I think I'll be binging that for the next, I think there's, I don't know, 3 that are coming out and then another 3. So that's the one I'm into right now, but we bought an Oculus. And so that's really been my bid, is playing the Oculus, I'll be honest.
Wait, what is that?
VR, virtual reality.
Okay.
Virtual,
Yeah.
Got it.
It's a little wild. I have a lot of opinions about it, but it's been also really fun way to get exercise.
Okay, nice. And then the closing question is, as you like after you talk with a voter, how would you want them to describe you in one sentence?
Tami is the leader we need to meet the moment that we are in right now, with her background in public health, her experience as a single parent, and her dedication to public service throughout her whole life.
Awesome. And then before we close, if people want to learn more about your campaign, where do they go?
Yeah, to learn more about our historic campaign, because this is an opportunity to have 2 women in the corner office, which no state has ever broken that barrier. You can learn more about our historic campaign at tamigouveia.com. We will put it in the chat. Kristen Ellico is my campaign manager, and she is here with us as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I think we got to